Please just watch this video so you understand what's going on. I see things on Twitter where people are talking about World War III or whatever. I'm just going to lay it out for you in simple terms. With Bitcoin, we're clearly still in a strong uptrend. Take a look at this year. The Sonata EMA has been tested 3 times during this bull run. Each time after that, we had a strong upward trend. Right now, we're in the 3rd upward trend. Maybe this could even be the final run, but at the moment it's clear that we're still very bullish here, as long as we don't drop below this level. If we do drop below, then it could definitely turn bearish, because in the past, that's how the bear market started. But right now, it doesn't look like that at all. With the US dollar, we can clearly see that it's weakening compared to the euro or other currencies, which is actually good for riskier assets. So above all, that's also good for the crypto market and for smaller stocks. But what we see is that the risk appetite, which should actually be there, just isn't. We can also see that gold is really at an all-time high. That's simply because there's too much uncertainty in the real world right now. I've actually found a chart for you here, and you can see it very clearly. When the copper-gold ratio is falling, Bitcoin usually drops as well. But when the ratio is rising, Bitcoin tends to go up too. Currently, the problem is that the price of gold has risen too sharply. That points to risk, to higher risk, and accordingly you can see that real-world companies, institutional investors and market makers are still a bit cautious when it comes to investing. Because now, with the conflict between Iran and Israel, there's obviously also a chance, however small, of a 3rd world war. But let's be honest, things are being blown out of proportion. Bitcoin is at $105,000, gold is at $3,000. If this conflict were to escalate the way some are predicting, gold would already be at $5,000, and we would probably have seen a correction of minus 30, 40, or even 50% in the S&P 500, but we haven't seen that. Why haven't we seen that? Because the market participants, the market makers, are taking this conflict somewhat seriously, but they don't expect it to escalate into a larger conflict. We can also see now that the US has already announced that American citizens should leave Iran, and that indicates that the US will also get involved. And now the next concern is that the US will get involved. Maybe on the Iranian side, China or Russia might also get involved or something like that, and then the fighting will continue there. It has already been observed that the US has flown several fighter jets and aircraft over towards Europe. And yes, it really looks like the US is also preparing to get involved in the war. That would be the next step, how this war would definitely escalate beyond what we currently expect. That would be the next ignition point. It would definitely further intensify and escalate this conflict. But here you have to understand, if the US gets involved, that would probably be very positive for our markets in the long term. And of course, I don't want to downplay the war. I don't think it's a good thing, but we're talking about a financial product here, and we're talking about facts. War is always bad, but that's not what we're discussing here. We're talking about the end result, and the fact is, Bitcoin has simply performed well, no matter what has happened here. Even when the Israel and Gaza conflict escalated, Bitcoin still held up well. When the Russia conflict escalated, Bitcoin was still doing well even 50 days later, and so on. No matter what kind of wars, in the long run, it was good for the markets. You can see that here as well. A short-term dip, yes, that has happened before, but in the long term, it was actually positive. I'll explain to you now why that's positive for the markets. And it sounds sad, yes, but look at what happens during crashes or at the start of such wars. Here we see the S&P 500. When we had this Corona crash here, look at how we corrected downward. We corrected incredibly sharply here by almost 35% in a very short time. But look at what happened afterwards. That was the moment when a lot of liquidity really flowed into the market, and since then we've made 120%, and that within 2 years in the S&P 500. That's crazy. So every time there's a crisis like this, the money printing starts again. And if the US gets involved in the Iran conflict now, I promise you we'll start printing money in the US right away. Immediately, because the US needs fresh money. Every country that goes to war needs money, and the US will start printing money right away. In 2008, during the financial crisis, it was exactly the same. Right after the big crash, the money printer came in to finance everything here. Even in 2001, after 9/11, right afterwards, money was printed, and for a few weeks the markets performed poorly. Yes, but then the markets recovered tremendously and even gained a lot more, simply because an enormous amount of capital flooded the markets. And the same thing would happen now if the US gets involved in the Iran conflict. I can actually tell you the same thing about this theory that we are now heading into a summer slump. I can disprove that for you as well. Take a look at the S&P 500 in 2018. We had a really nice upward trend, really strong performance, really nice uptrend up until about January 2018. Exactly at the beginning of the year, when the markets are usually performing well, things were actually not going well at all for the S&P 500. We saw a correction. What happened after that? A really strong summer. The summer uptrend started around April and actually didn't see any correction during the summer. It even continued until the end of the year. Despite the summer period, there was a really strong uptrend in the real economy. Who was president in 2018? Donald Trump, just like today. Today, things look quite similar. We really had some tough periods here, and at the beginning of the year, things were actually pretty bad. But now it looks like we're going to have a pretty positive summer simply because the time before wasn't good. That's why this theory about the summer slump is actually invalid, since the start of the year was already so bad. The summer should actually turn out better as a result. And as I said, in 2018, yes, P500 performed just like it is now. And in 2018, we also had Donald Trump as president. So all of this can't just be a coincidence. And to give this video a bit more substance, I'll show you this again. I've already included this in the videos once or twice. Save this for yourself. Hammer this into your head. When we're looking at Bitcoin on the daily trend, so here T or D, depending on the chart, it should say one day. If we're there and above the 25 EMA, so here, this is an indicator. It's currently activated here. If we're above it, that's positive. Right now we're just below it, but not in any way that's really significant. That's why it still looks okay, but it would be better if we were above it. If we're above it here and also above it on the altcoin chart, that's the best thing that could happen to us. Then this is the right altcoin side. Let's move on to the altcoins. Here we can clearly see we're definitely below it. Accordingly, the altcoins aren't performing well at the moment. If we reclaim this line and manage to break through it, that would be the perfect scenario, and then the altcoins will start performing again. So this is how you can figure out whether the altcoin season is coming, when the altcoins will perform in the near future, or if only Bitcoin is performing right now. A really important point. At the moment, you can see that Bitcoin is roughly in balance. Altcoins being below is not ideal. If both were to drop significantly now, which is possible then in the short term, that would definitely be a tougher blow. But no matter what happens, even with the Iran conflict, in the long run, the markets will recover from that as well. I mean, no matter what crisis, you can see it here in the background too. A short-term crash, but a long-term rise. Whether it was 2001, 1991, 2003, 2014, when Russia had the issue with Crimea, there was a short-term drop, but in the long run, things rose significantly. That's why you shouldn't overreact to the whole situation right now. I still hope that everything ends peacefully and that these wars just completely stop around the world. But unfortunately, that's not how the world works. And with that, I want to sincerely thank you all. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Bye.